The House Speaker with another rant, police investigating a $600,000 drug bust, and the Attorney General addresses a leaked communication. Good evening, everyone. I'm Leah Cooper with your JCN News for this Wednesday, May 5th. While some issues regarding last Wednesday's House of Assembly session were resolved on Monday, there are still some issues that needed to be addressed. And House Speaker Jcn Moultrie did just that by sounding off again this morning. When parliamentarians met on Monday, Speaker Moultrie told colleagues that any issues relating to disagreements has been resolved. Those issues included the sanitization of Parliament and free testing for parliamentary staffers and members of the House who were exposed to COVID-19.
In the resolution of those issues, more disturbing issues developed in that on the 30th of April, members were asked to be tested, as well as staffers were asked to be tested. The result of those tests, I'm instructed, for the most part, were given by word of mouth, either by a doctor at the office of the Prime Minister or by the Secretary to the Cabinet, and to some staff members by the Human Resources Manager. Now, what disturbed me was, first of all, was that there was no communication with the clerk of this parliament, who is still able to communicate via technology, and I keep in constant communication with him, and no information was passed on to the Speaker.
That said, the Speaker accused the government of being disrespectful and dishonest. The most disturbing of it, he says, was to discover that certain staff members were called and notified that while they were negative, they should not attend work or House proceedings until contact tracing was complete. But cabinet ministers were able to attend today's proceeding.
The level of disrespect and dishonesty is something that I am severely challenged with, because we're dealing with COVID-19. Now, the result of telling that individual that she cannot attend this parliament is that the two persons who are considered loyal to the Speaker are denied the right to be in this parliament. Members of the Cabinet are allowed to come with no condition after the test, but staffers who are loyal to the Speaker and should be loyal to the Speaker if they understand the Westminster model of governance are forced out of this parliament.
The Speaker further notes what he calls many unresolved issues, including overtime pay, noting that parliamentary staff is due overtime pay for the last 4 years. He also renewed his call for a hybrid model to be introduced for House proceedings.
It's time for this parliament to pass a resolution so that we can meet in hybrid form, face-to-face or virtually. It's time. It's time for the independence of this parliament, for the executive branch of the government to stop dragging this parliament around like a dingy boat. It's time for the independence of this parliament.
Speaker Moultrie contends that it's a matter of light and darkness, good and evil, and invited the Prime Minister, Dr. Hubert Minnis, to address the issues. However, Dr. Minnis, in his rising, said he will respond, quote, in the appropriate time. The House of Assembly was then adjourned for roughly 15 minutes before reconvening. Parliamentarians met to debate the Securities Industry Amendment Bill 2021 and the Insurance Amendment Bill 2021, which was debated as a compendium. Meantime, the public's voicing their opinions on that tense moment in the House of Assembly this morning, what seemed as a standoff between Speaker Jcn Moultrie and Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis. Jarino Saunders has more.
After a brief but intense sitting of the lower chambers last Wednesday, today's proceedings in Parliament again got off to a rocky start, with the Speaker of the House, Jcn Moultrie, chiding the governing side regarding communications relating to COVID-19 concerns at Parliament. After his communication, Mr. Moultrie demanded the Prime Minister respond to comments made. However, that did not happen, as the Prime Minister rose and attempted to lead debate on a compendium of bills. The Speaker shut him down and insisted that he speak to the Bahamian people. Well, the House adjourned for 15 minutes because of an impasse between Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis and the Speaker, and following the break, members were able to get on with the business of the House. However, the public continued to weigh in on what took place. Callers to Love 97's talk show Issues of the Day with host Wendell Jones were critical of both the Speaker and the Prime Minister.
I think the Parliament should be prorogued, and then a new Speaker should be put in place. I mean, that's leadership. That should have been done. That's where the Prime Minister falls on leadership.
I think everybody would agree that there's some contention between the Speaker and the current administration, and no doubt between him and the Prime Minister. But I think the best thing for the administration to do would be to leave the Speaker in the chair, and so everybody can see how disputes are resolved amicably, or let's see how they handle it, how grown adults handle differences.
Dr. Minnis, in his response to the Speaker this morning, noted that he was always told communications in the House was not to be contentious and that he will respond at an appropriate time. Here is another member of the public and their opinion of the situation.
It seems to me, in my view, that the Speaker have an agenda and he seems to be very bitter. Now let me make this point clear. Please, public, please do not label me politically. I do not like politics because I see in this country that we want to make politics our first religion. But my issue is the behavior. My late father used to say this: if a group of men can't come into a meeting to agree and disagree, it's useless. There should be a meeting.
On Monday, Speaker Moultrie told parliamentarians that some issues had been resolved. However, during today's session, he contends that there are still many unresolved issues. Jurino Saunders for Jcn News.
The Office of the Attorney General reporting leaked communications. In a statement, Attorney General Senator Carl Bethel says, as Attorney General, he was asked by Cabinet to conduct negotiations seeking to resolve the Toby Smith matter involving his proposed lease of Crown land on Paradise Island. He says a face-to-face preliminary meeting was held. Subsequently, Mr. Smith contacted him via social media on the basis of privacy. Negotiations continued on that basis. Regrettably, Mr. Smith has breached the privacy that he himself indicated in his initial contact. Negotiations are not usually assisted by arguing and telling the other party to negotiate that he himself is completely unreasonable. Since that time, Mr. Smith has commenced a legal action in the Supreme Court. Informal contact accordingly ceased. It is interesting to know that the said legal action seems not to be going anywhere and that Mr. Smith now appears to prefer litigating in the press rather than in court. The Sandals Royal Bahamian property in New Providence is getting a $30+ million upgrade just before its fall reopening. Here's Laurencia Smith with that report.
The Sandals Royal Bahamian Resort property is set to undergo a $37 million facelift ahead of its November 2021 reopening date. This coming from Sandals Resort International Executive Chairman Adam Stewart during a walkabout of the property this morning.
So if you just very logically sort of walk back to when the pandemic began in March, we lost our spring vacations, we lost our summer vacations, we lost the fall, which is notorious for brides and the honeymoon market, Caribbean wide and actually worldwide. We lost our Christmas holidays, and in many instances, we didn't have the best first quarter as the vaccination program started to roll out.
Some 980 individuals are expected to return back to work during the reopening, while some 85 continue working during this current closed period. The chairman already is predicting a very lucrative end-of-year season for the resort.
And then at the back end of the year, what you're seeing and what we can see, Sandals does a tremendous amount of our bookings many months out. So we have a very good pulse of the trend and pace of what's coming. And in our own company, I'm on record, so I'm happy to say it here, that we're seeing in excess of 25 to 30% ahead of booking pace of 2019.
Minister of Tourism Denisio Diagala, who was on hand this morning, says he's excited about the renovations, while adding that it will continue to boost the country's tourism product, especially regarding hotels on the Cable Beach Strip.
Enormous amount of investment going into hotel infrastructure along the Cable Beach Strip. And they quickly recognized the need to keep ahead of that curve, to make sure that their product was the best on this strip. And so they've come back to the Bahamas, come back after the pandemic with a renewed energy to make this, uplift this property and make it, as I said, the best hotel in the Sandals chain.
Resort executive says that they are confident that they will see a return on their investment. Sandals official says they are confident that they will see a return on their $30,000 plus investment here at its Nassau property. I'm Laurentia Smith for JCN News.
You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.